What's up, everybody, and welcome to another video. I'm Rich Wilson, founder and filmmaker at Vibe Media, where we help your brand build to an influencer-level online presence using filmmaking tools and tips to tell your story. We got another episode of the Vibe Check Show for you today, and it's a movie challenge episode where Forrest challenged us to watch the 2000 Michael Figgis masterpiece, Timecode. I say it's a masterpiece because it was definitely out of the box thinking, very unorthodox, where you have 4 cameras all in real time, all at the same time, following 4 different characters. You know what, there's a lot to this movie and a lot to unload, so if you haven't seen it, well, spoiler warning, we are going to get into it, and also you might want to go check it out and then come back here and watch the episode and let us know what we think, or listen to what we think. But like I said, there's a lot to unload, so let's just get on with the episode. Hey everybody, welcome to Vibe Check, the video podcast for filmmakers and film enthusiasts. I'm Rich Wilson. I've got Dana, we've got Forrest. We are here. We've got another movie challenge for us. And we are talking about the movie Timecode. Came out in 2000.
Yes.
And Forrest, you challenged us this. Why did you challenge this to us?
I think just because it's a very interesting movie. I think we had talked about, it got brought up when we were talking about kind of independent-ish films and something that's a little different, single shot. So this is a great example of kind of an independent film with a couple of actors that have since, gained some reputation at this point.
Yeah.
But this is a genuine single shot movie. There's a couple of facts and things that I'm not sure if you guys were aware of, but I'll touch on kind of after we're done talking about it. Just about how many times they had to do the shots, kind of what was involved in a lot of this here. So what did you guys?
Yeah, I know how many times they did the shots only because they said it at the end, but that's about it as far as knowledge, mainly because I also just finished it before coming here. I'm a procrastinator, okay?
You just wanted it fresh in your mind, It's okay. It's okay. I've only watched it yesterday. I liked the movie.
I loved it. I thought it was so cool and creative.
It
got a little chaotic when they were overlapping on audio, but didn't faze me that much.
Yeah, so the movie is 4 different cameras, all shot pretty much at the very same time, and the movie is in 4 quadrants, right? You've got one camera here, here, and here, right? And they're following a certain character.
At least to start.
A character throughout the entire film, and some of these characters, they mesh in with one another, so it goes to one camera where the camera that's not being used usually goes to the drugged out security guard who's addicted to everything, it seems like.
Yeah, I felt like when the cameras would kind of overlap characters, then they would switch almost. They would trade places.
I did notice that.
Which was so cool. And there'd also, like, towards the end, there was some double scene shots, but they were from different angles. So it almost felt like you were watching it different perspectives, which was so cool. And then same with the audio, like, it would minimize the less important dialogue and focus more on what's going to drive the story and the plot, and show you how each of these characters is connected, because it's there's 4 screens, but there's way more than 4 characters.
So the audio portion, just so you guys know to keep in mind, there is a theatrical version, which I'm assuming you guys probably end up finding, which is gonna kind of auto blend the audio in the way that makes the most sense. However, if you have the actual DVD itself, it does allow you to manipulate the audio in real time. So you can essentially watch the movie listening to just the audio of one camera the entire time. You can get a complete story of one thing and then rewatch it and get a different one.
Interesting.
Because there is a little bit of different audio that happens that's not necessarily important to the overall story,
but it's still interesting.
But to that side story.
I wanted to fully hear the therapist. I really wished they would have kind of, mic'd her up a little better, or done something, because she just was so background audio.
Very background noise. Well, because I think they were mostly trying to focus mostly on Emma.
No, and I get that, but it's just she was also like asking her so many intriguing questions. Like it would have been interesting to hear those questions instead of trying to like, strain myself to like understand why she's talking about, this dream or what's, driving the conversation almost.
I actually watched the movie with headphones on, and it was such a great dynamic where the sound mixing for this was really, really done brilliantly because of the 4 quadrants. If there was something happening on the right bottom, I only heard it out of the right headphone. I can still hear it out of the left one, but it was much lower. They definitely panned it more to the right. Same thing on the other side. If there was some action happening on the left side of the screen, it was definitely panned more to the left. It only came together if they were 2 characters that were on the same in 2 different cameras, but they were in the same room. And no, I thought that was a very cool dynamic to the entire movie. That no matter where the action was, your ear went to that action too. Like it really drew you to like, oh, something's happening in the top from right, what's going on? I'm listening to, so yeah, it was definitely, film school or film student pulling out all the stops, all the tricks, all of the, it wasn't generic. It was just that independent, all the little tricks and trades and tips that you used all rolled up into one. And it was fun.
Yeah, and the way that the shots, as you had mentioned before, some of the characters kind of switch to whichever camera they're in. A lot of that is obviously logistically trying to make sure they're not in each other's shots.
Yeah,
and
I was like,
if cameras go into a room in one way, they have to come out the same way without.
It was so funny. The second time Salma Hayek's character goes back into the bathroom, you see the camera guy's hand on the door. Like you see him push it open for himself, and I'm just like. I mean, it happens because obviously it's not going to be perfect because this is such a like dynamic logistical film. There's too many working parts to expect.
And it's all.
But you see that, but you never see the cameras in each other's shots.
But they're like, you can tell where they're angled. They're just on the edge. Like when I can't remember her name, that lady that was singing with her boyfriend and talking about music and all that stuff. You could literally see like where the camera edge was, and you're like, I know he's like literally 6 inches over there.
Right, especially when they were focused on Alex and on her, and they were kind of going back and forth, and then they moved to focus on her from Alex's perspective, and then just from the straight on following her. It was very interesting because I'm like,
been so in sync and communicating so well, because even the earthquake scenes, like some of them were like a little delayed, but it was only like half a second.
They're as close as possible from being away from each other. Yeah, it's really an impressive movie as far as the thought process that goes into it.
Also compared to what else came out in the 2000s.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that. It's just the more you watch it, the more impressed you are by it, because you're like, that's so much work to try to do it all in one shot, to make sure you're always conscious of other cameras. Like, as a camera person myself, I can only imagine when you have 4 cameras in one room, how hard it is to not get into each other's shots.
Right. God, and those poor actors too, like making sure they're playing to the right camera, and they're like not.
And it's single shot. You mess it up, you have to go back and redo the entire thing.
But okay, so kind of not to ruin what you wanted to talk about towards the end, but I know they filmed it 4 times. Was that just how many times they flat out filmed it, or were there more retakes because
I think it was
shot?
Just 4 times that they flat out filmed it, and then they just took the best one.
There was more. They did it about 16 times.
That's what I thought, because I also know. Once again, a lot of it was also improvised. They were given like a very basic plot.
Which you kind of have to do.
Yeah, and I also kind of assumed, because there was not a lot of. Like in the limo with Salma Hayek and Rose and Laura, they're not really talking. It's more so their body language that they're really focused on, and you could kind of tell that was a little improvised. Some of their scenes in the car, and Same with the security guard, the drug test security guard.
Oh my gosh, that guy! I think he was the worst.
Been fun.
I think he was the worst character in this entire
really?
thing.
He was the most comedic one. He was like the comedic relief a little bit.
Really? Well, maybe for you, but for me, it was just like every scene he was in, he was just trying to get high again and again and again.
What was so funny about
it? I guess so.
Especially towards the end when Laura goes in there and does what she does.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
He's not doing the one thing he's supposed to be doing.
Right, exactly. It's like, dude, like you're a security guard and where are you? Right? Where are you?
What was so funny about it? Because you see where he is.
Yes.
Like,
well, and it's
so funny.
It's a very smart film. Again, as you were mentioning, because there is moments where there's not a lot of dialogue, it's a lot of body language. The reason they did that is because obviously there's more of an important story going on in this camera.
Yeah.
And that's when the audio moved over to like a different camera, is when there's something important here. So they don't want to distract you with extravagant lines and things over here
at the
when
same
this
time,
is happening.
How did they know when it was the appropriate times to do that without overlapping? Because, and granted, there were moments where they did overlap for sure, but it was not as much as I was expecting it when I first started the movie.
It's a lot of planning.
I kind of assumed and just... they probably have wireless comms. We need
Oh,
those.
yeah. I'm sure that there was like a bug in every cameraman's ear with the director going, okay.
Oh my gosh,
it's
that
like,
poor director
exactly.
must have just
It's like,
been
okay,
high-strung.
we've got the earthquake coming up in 3, 2, 1 now. Whatever. We have no cameraman to do that. Sorry, but yeah, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I did like the nice touch, like what you're talking about with like some of the bleed over of the audio, like when you hear Salma Hayek talking, or when Rose is talking, and Laura's listening, you could hear that faint like audio version of what she's listening to, which. Honestly, her quadrant was like the least engaging for me because most of the time she was just going.
Really, for me, I felt like it was the most emotional because she just. I know you think it's silly that she was acting like that, but I feel like she had like some very serious concerns clearly.
Sure,
and it really drives the story of this affair that Rose was having with Alex, and it was kind of like. I don't know if it was like the main plot point around it that like this affair kind of kicked off a lot of like the issues of like Emma going to the therapist and Laura listening in on Rose and then going in and spoilers shooting Alex and the ending also was so sweet when he's talking to her on the phone and she doesn't even know he's dead and
oh yeah
it's really is just such a smart movie. And as somebody who like went to film school, trying to imagine like that being one of your first films that you do, like not only getting some of the cast and stuff that they did,
but
obviously,
to pull off what he did,
but to pull it off is a feat in itself. And the audio portion really does only get improved by the fact that if you do have the DVD version and you can literally select the audio you want to hear, it changes the story each time you're listening to it.
I would love to go through and watch it technically 3.5 times because one of the cameras at some point is just showing the same thing. But I would love to go through and just watch each individual square and like fully see what they're seeing from their story and kind of piece it all
also
together.
it's I would be especially Emma's square.
Hers is the most interesting.
Yeah, because there was a little bit of time where she wasn't there, but then it all came back together to her. And then I would have liked to have listened to at least when she was hanging out with that old friend of hers, and they went to the house.
Judd Apatow's wife?
Yes, and then they were just like hanging out on the couch, and then
they get all close.
Get all close, and then the boyfriend shows up, and he's like, "You need to get out of here." It's like, what was going on there, other than them, sharing cocaine, Or
I think they might have been more than just old friends,
Maybe.
based off of how they were treating each other. You know.
Well, I think it seemed like that they were probably, like they knew each other. Maybe she was an actress, but before, and then she got with Alex, and the telltale, story,
Actress falls for the director.
Yeah, producer, and
I love watching you guys try to figure out like what's what. Like looking into it because I already know. I've
Yeah,
watched it
yeah.
3 or 4 times
Okay,
now.
so then
Exactly.
what is it?
Yeah, so it is exact. You guys are literally on the right track for a lot of this. You know, obviously there is more to a lot of the relationships as you hear more of the
I
conversations.
mean, clearly Rose was dating Alex so she could get a role and then evidently ended up getting it herself. But also I have to ask, were they a porn production company or were they a legit movie production company? I could not tell because they would talk about...
They never really...
Also, I loved that when they did the Office moments, it literally felt like you were watching The Office.
Right,
Like
yeah.
some of their conversations are like, oh man, this herpes outbreak is really, weighing us down. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this movie is a great example. It's a good mix of like serious moments because there's like a serious story and then
But then
comedy
so
moments.
silly, like the Swedish
then,
masseuse.
Which was
then,
my
like-
favorite character.
Then like
He's just in here, like, hearing these awkward conversations.
Exactly, and just like some of those transition, when somebody's walking out of a room to go to another room, and just the way that they're going through the office, you just see him in the back, like elbowing somebody. It's just like he was and then he was reading for Rose, and he had all those lines memorized already.
It was weird.
She's reading off of it, and he was just like, oh yeah, you're the your uncle is like the alligator guy, right? Or
you
whatever.
can tell it's an independent film for sure.
It was.
Yes,
You could also tell in a lot of parts that it was definitely improvised because we've seen Salma Hayek act so much better in other roles, and there was some of those moments and some of those beats where I was just like, this seems really forced, and I think she's just trying to drag it out along to get to that next.
When she's like putting on the lipstick in the mirror, you can really tell, like, because it's like, girl, no one spends that much time putting on lipstick, especially in the car.
Right.
But she's serious, man. She's serious
so
about
serious.
Yeah. I will have to say one thing though. At the end, as soon as the shot happened, it kind of fell apart for me. It stopped being real. Like for me, like there was a lot of realness to the whole situation. But as soon as Laura came in, and she's like, "Where's Alex?" and she took out the gun, and then she shot him. Like that's a very real thing that can happen. But everything afterwards didn't seem real. Like people would be running out of the building, which you did see, but they wouldn't be clumped together up at the entrance and sitting there. And then when Laura walks out, they go.
Well, actually, you would be very surprised in real scenarios because I did go to college. I went for criminal justice studies for a little bit, and there are a lot of scenarios with like mass shooters where people don't exit the building. They just don't. They more so group together because they think it's safer.
True.
And it's just instinct,
True.
You're safer in
Okay,
numbers.
yeah, but even in that little instance there, where she like takes a step forward and they're going.
I mean, also look at how silly the other aspects of the movie.
True, but there were still some undertones of like some kind of realness to it that kind of threw me out of it.
Yeah.
Also, nobody called 911.
No, you hear the police sirens in the background.
Yeah, during the credits.
Rose's character is the one who calls the police.
Was
she literally goes, "I'm going to call the cops."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like 5 minutes after.
No. It was right after.
Really?
Yeah, she left Alex while Alex was on the phone with his wife.
Yeah.
But that audio with his wife overpowered everything else because that was supposed to be like the mending kind of moment.
Well, it just seemed like like also what's her face, the intelligent woman just gets her camera out, which she was on the table, gets his camera out.
So dumb. Recording him die. But also, I would kind of do the same thing.
Well, I guess it's this generation. Look, we've got phones. Like, what was it? 10 years ago, Bill Nye was at like a high school, passed out on stage. Nobody ran up to help him. They all just went.
Yeah, that is like a very real thing that people do. They're more.
Right, but
bystanders.
Yeah, but this was like 2000. Like I understand her. Like she's like, oh, this is like
she gave
very
me real,
interesting. But then she like, oh, let me.
Hey, Rich, you're also doing a lot of questioning of film logic, which
yes,
we all know.
I know.
Of someone's very first film.
Literally,
I know.
Logistically, too, you don't want them to spread out actors in a big city.
Right. I loved it up until like that point. Then it just kind of unraveled. It took me out of the whole situation. It seemed it seemed kind of weird for me. Like, oh,
Fair
like,
enough.
you know, like, why was like nobody next to him trying to apply pressure, you know, on the wound, because that's also a very natural thing to do.
That is like what you're supposed to do.
But it just, for me, just kind of unraveled, and it just kind of just, you know, meh.
Maybe it was supposed to. Maybe it was supposed to create this realism, and then at the end make you realize this is just a movie from the 2000s.
Right.
It's not that real, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that classic independent films too. They do have really good creative stories, but then can sometimes
The ending
Fall
can sometimes
short on the-
fall a
on the-
little
yeah,
flat.
they forget that they're limited on time, or they don't know how to wrap up a story.
Yeah.
So they just have to figure out some way to end it.
But I love the audio. I love the music behind it too. Like, the music was fantastic, which the director actually apparently wrote many of it. You know,
That's so funny you bring up the music, because some scenes where there'd be like a serious shot happening down here in like the lower left, and then the other scenes would be all like funny and happy, and the music flows with it, and I'm just like, this is hilarious.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
It's a smart movie. It really is the dynamic between
It really was.
a drama and a comedy and like action.
Well, it was
and-
it
life.
all interlinks
Yeah.
together.
it was life. That's what life is about. It's all of that. Like, we don't have just a plain theme or just one theme in our life. Like, we're not just, you know, the comedy and the drama.
Well,
I
and
am
this
the comedy of
Yes.
this.
Yes,
and this
very
harkens
true.
back though to one of my favorite words that I've ever really discovered is the word sonder, and it's that realization that everybody's life is just as complex as yours. I mean, there's just as many ins and outs. So when you actually do get to like experience and change the audio and listen to just one square at a time, and you get more of the story, you're like, you realize that the main story, yes, what you saw is a good like indication of what's going on overall, but there's so many other small details in each one of the stories that that makes it so much
Interesting.
better.
Yeah.
And it progresses the story to all those small details, because if it wasn't for Rose going to see her therapist, she never would have ventured and gone to go see Alex and told him she's leaving him. And then in turn, she never would have met her old friend and gone
Right.
through that whole story. And, you know, then Laura never would have found out who Alex was and went in and shot him. And just that whole...
The whole
If it
thing,
wasn't
yeah.
for one thing, then none of it would have happened. Or
Gosh,
like
it's like
resulted
we
in
were
the
talking
end.
about Run Lola Run again, you know,
The
that
butterfly
one, yeah,
effect.
Crazy,
the butterfly
so
effect,
crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, that's
So good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Also,
really was.
I know
It really
I have
was.
to ask, because obviously not the film student kid here. I know Timecode is something to do with behind the scenes filmmaking. Is that on what is that in reference to?
Time code is literally just
Like
at the
the
bottom
camera?
of the camera.
Okay.
There's a running time code. And you do see this too for
Yeah.
when like the earthquakes happen. It's all synced up to that time code. There's a specific, like when it hits this time, that's when all the cameras start to shake. Da-da-da. So it's a double entendre on that, because it's
Yeah, I figured, but I
Cameras.
didn't
Yeah.
know.
Or-
I didn't know
or even-
specifically
right.
what equipment or what it was referencing to saying timecode. I know
Yeah,
there's
and-
so many different.
And if you see some
mechanics
of
to it.
the if you see some of the clappers that have
They
like
also
the,
have-
the like running numbers and they click, you know, that's to sync everything, you know,
Gotcha.
because everything is on that certain time code. Heck, if you look in our top right hand corner, you see those numbers. That's the time code of our
Learn something new every day.
Yeah,
There you go.
so, you know, that's why we do it
See, and this just proves you don't need to be a film student to appreciate films.
exactly.
well, I'm glad you guys like the film. It's
It
definitely
was great.
I did.
I'm
I
gonna
did.
recommend it to my friends who are like really into like art house films.
And honestly, I would definitely would like to go back and watch it a few more times with just watching those certain squares. Maybe not Laura's because because it's just her listening the entire time.
Well, maybe you'll
and
pick up
probably
on
don't
some
know.
audio that you
Very
couldn't
true.
hear before.
Very true.
But also, yeah. Real quick before we ended, I thought it was so cool the way they'd introduce characters too in the background, show them through like a window or something, and you pick up on their audio through the other person who's talking to them on the phone.
Yes.
But you see, yeah, it was just so cool.
It's a very smart film.
That
Again,
was like,
it's-
you don't see that anymore.
it's
I mean,
little-
obviously you don't see Ford.
well, that's the independent film vibe. Is like
Yeah.
independent films, they do more creative things because
I
they
think
want to be
independent
different.
films just aren't as prominent nowadays. Like we talked about in our nostalgia video, like it just gets so oversaturated with these reboots and stuff that like the independent films kind of get, pushed to the side and don't get as much traction. Yeah. I could see why no one's ever mentioned this movie to me before ever. I don't know anyone that would watch it.
But now you know. Now it's a good one.
Now we know, and it's definitely something that definitely to revisit more and more. And if you haven't seen it, well, that's our thoughts on it. Go watch it. Go watch it apparently 4 times. Go find the DVD and have that option.
Dude, Amazon Prime. Something like that.
Yeah, I got it on Prime.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you actually get the DVD, though, it's definitely worth it to do that because you can physically control the audio, and I think it changes or allows you that interactive.
That's cool.
Even more so. You get more control over the story.
Heck, that's even just more reason to just love that kind of filmmaking when you think like the post and how interactive it can be and what you can do with the movie rather than just watch it. It's like you can do so much more with it. That's a whole other thing.
That reminds me what Netflix did with the whole Bandersnatch thing, where it was interactive and you like got to choose.
Yeah, this is 20 years prior
Before
to
that.
this.
This was the first Bandersnatch, basically.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So cool.
Thank you.
Good recommendation.
Yes, absolutely. We'll do another round of these in the coming weeks, and we'll get to that. But let us know what you think, and maybe some movies that you want to challenge us to. Maybe we'll do one of those eventually, of having you guys challenge us on a movie, and we'll talk about it and see what we think about it. So if you have any ideas, go to the comments, let us know, and hit the like button, smash it.
All the good
Subscribe,
stuff.
All the good stuff.
Set notification bells.
Exactly.
All
of that good stuff. But you'll hear me say that in like a minute from now anyway. So
we're begging for subscriptions, please.
Well, absolutely. We need to support one another. But again, thank you for listening to the show.
Absolutely.
And keep vibing.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. Just like we did, that movie was just incredible. Very different perspective, filmmakers galore. A lot of filmmaking tropes and tools and tricks in there. Absolutely loved it. Hey, if you liked that video, make sure that you hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel where we come up with a new episode every single Friday. And also we are creating more content that is coming your way. Not just content that we are working on, but also content that's definitely going to benefit you in your filmmaking and your branding and building your brand online. Well, that's it for this video, and until then, keep creating, build your brand, and go out there and tell your story.